The Cuban Missile Crisis was a 13-day standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union in October 1962, triggered by the discovery of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba. It was the closest the world has ever come to full-scale nuclear war and remains one of the most intense moments of the Cold War. Cold War rivalry and U.S.-Cuba tensions. After Fidel Castro's 1959 revolution, Cuba became a communist nation and aligned with the Soviet Union. The U.S. saw Castro as a threat and tried to remove him, leading to the Bay of Pigs invasion, April 1961, which failed miserably. In response, Castro feared another U.S. invasion and sought Soviet protection. Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet leader, saw an opportunity to place nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the U.S. This would counter U.S. missiles in Turkey and give the USSR a nuclear advantage. Day 1. U.S. discovers the missiles. A U-2 spy plane flying over Cuba took photographs of Soviet missile sites under construction. President John F. Kennedy was briefed on October 16th and had to decide how to respond. Day 2 to 5. Kennedy's tough choice. The U.S. military pushed for an immediate airstrike and invasion of Cuba. Kennedy instead chose a naval quarantine, blockade, to prevent more Soviet missiles from arriving. Day 6 to 9. The world on the edge. Kennedy gave a historic TV speech on October 22nd, warning the U.S. would use force if necessary. The Soviet Union called the blockade an act of war and refused to back down. Soviet ships carrying missiles approached the U.S. blockade, and the world braced for war. Day 10 to 12. A dangerous game. A Soviet submarine nearly launched a nuclear torpedo when it was cornered by U.S. warships. Secret letters between Kennedy and Khrushchev showed both sides wanted to avoid war. Day 13, the crisis ends. Khrushchev agreed to remove the missiles from Cuba in exchange for a U.S. public promise not to invade Cuba, a secret deal to remove U.S. missiles from Turkey. The crisis ended peacefully and nuclear war was avoided. The crisis humiliated Khrushchev, but was seen as a win for Kennedy, boosting his reputation. Cuba remained communist, but Castro felt betrayed by the Soviets. Both nations realized how close they came to mutual destruction and set up the hotline, direct communication between Washington and Moscow. In 1963, the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty was signed to reduce nuclear tensions. The Cuban Missile Crisis remains the most dangerous moment in Cold War history. It showed the importance of diplomacy, crisis management, and avoiding nuclear war.